Good morning, friends. Uh, been on vacation here, so no videos in a little bit. Kind of a little under the weather too, but we're gonna power through and get you this video on Jester, the new Navy hero for this month. Jester's an attack hero, so it's similar to Stromoy. There's some similarities and some differences from Stromoy, and so you may want to look at how you play them with other heroes to see which one might work better for you. But first off, let's go ahead and look at the stats and compare the two and see where we're at. So Jester's preparation skill is an 80% attack enhancement for all naval units and a 40% attack enhancement for the front two rows. Both of them last the entire battle, and that is a nice bump because Stormroy's was a 70% attack enhancement and a 30% attack enhancement for the back two rows. So you get 10% more for everybody, and you get 10% more for the first two rows than what Stormboy gave to the back two rows. If you've been watching, you know I always think that benefiting the front row is the most important, second row is next, third row is last, just because they usually get off more shots earlier in the fight. Now the difference here is that Stormboy's preparation skill also had 10% silent precision, which is basically a damage increase based on damage reduction shields, but you get 10% just right there. Um, so that's the big difference between Jester and Stormway, is that Stormway had a lot to do with damage reduction shields and boosting damage based on how many you have. And Jester, as you'll see in Jester's passive skill, has more to do with vulnerable and debilitation. So Jester's passive skill here is that at the start of each round, you silence two enemies for the turn, which is basically what Stormware did, and you get 30% debilitation to 2 to 4 enemies for one turn. Debilitation is a attack reduction uh, for that unit, so it will reduce the amount of attack they have, and as a result, the way the formula works, that'll reduce eventually the amount of damage they do to you when they hit you. Sorry about that. So again, you're replacing basically for Stormroy you had the 10% silent precision, and then for the passive skill you had for each damage reduction shield, you gain 10% damage increase up to a total of 200%. And you had the silence on two enemy units in the first two rows. So Stormroy's silence was more focused in the first two rows, and Jester's will go to any row. But basically, you're taking away that damage increase from the damage reduction shields, and you're getting debilitation on 2 to 4 enemy units for one turn each round. 30% debilitation. So, real quick, just so you guys are clear on this, Stormroy's damage reduction, that meant that if your hero had Indestruct, that was a damage reduction shield. Meowzilla provides damage reduction shields. Crimson provides damage reduction shields. Maplin provides damage reduction shields. And so whenever they did those, and I think Maplin and Meowzilla also benefited with their splash damage from the damage reduction shields. So that kind of worked well together. But every time they got those damage reduction shields, that boosted the damage increase 10% with Stormboy up to 200%. Now, here you don't get that anymore, but you do get 30% debilitation, 2 to 4 enemies for one turn each round. So, this is kind of like I talk a lot about Titan Gear now. If your Titan Gear enhances your debilitation effect, that's going to help Jester. Duke and Layla give debilitation as well, so it would help them as well. But, so that's not I think with Meowzilla and Crimson and Maplin, Stormway worked better. But with the debilitation effect and the vulnerable effect we're about to see, I think maybe with Zen, Jester's going to be better. But remember, Jester also has a much better attack enhancement, so that's probably going to help as well. So now, let's look at the exclusive skill. At level 3, they both have the 30% attack increase. At level 5, for Jester, all vulnerable and debilitation effects are boosted by 40%, and the hero gains one more silence unit. Sorry. So the vulnerable effect being boosted by 40% and the debilitation effects being boosted by 40%. This is all of them. The ones that Jester applies and the ones that other people apply. Kind of like with a bod, we had the boost to ignition effect was for everybody who ignited anybody during that turn or during that, fight. Same thing here. So this is kind of nice because, Zen gives vulnerable to different people. Crimson gives vulnerable to different people. So with those two heroes, now that vulnerable, I think Zen's was like 15%, is now boosted by 40%. That's a sizable bump right there. And the debilitation that Duke or Layla give is also boosted by 40%, and the debilitation that Jester gives is boosted by 40%. So you're going to take a lot less damage because of that debilitation, and you're going to do more damage to the units that have vulnerable because of that boost at level 5. Plus, you're going to silence one more unit at level 5. For Stormroy, you didn't get that third silence until level 7. For Stormroy at level 5, your silent precision was increased to 25%, and you got heavy armor at the beginning of every turn, 40%, all naval units. So basically, they got armor, which worked for one hit, and that counts as a damage reduction shield, and it was 25% per damage reduction shield, up to 200% maximum damage increase. So you got to that 200% faster with your level 5 with Stormboy, and you got some armor, which is a good thing. But again, I think the vulnerable debilitation boost here is really nice, and the silencing a third unit here is very nice because a lot of people don't ever make it to level 7, but at level 5 you can silence 3 units. That's pretty cool. At level 7, you have that if the units that you're attacking are an abnormal status, which means they have vulnerable or debilitation on them or any sort of effect like that, the damage increases by 30%, and now your debilitation went from 2 to 4 units to 3 to 5 units. So you're debilitating more units, and then when they're hit, they get damaged more. And this is by any hero's active skill. So if you pair, with Layla and Zen, just as an example, when Zen does the active skill, if it hits a unit that's in abnormal status, it's going to do 30% more damage. And if Layla hits a unit that's in debilitation status, it's going to do 30% more damage. So this is going to really increase the damage you do to the enemy units that are in abnormal status. And, I mean, you're going to put 3 to 5 in abnormal status right away. For example, Zen and Crimson put some of them in abnormal status, and Layla, when she attacks, puts some of them in abnormal status. So that's going to probably be a lot of units on the opponent's side that you can have that effect on at level 7. For Stormroy, level 7 meant that your silent precision was increased to 50%, so it was each damage reduction shield did 50% damage increase, up to 200% still, and you silenced one more target. So you silenced 3 targets in the first 2 rows. Now again, you already got that extra silence at level 5 with Jester, and I always thought the 50% damage increase was nice because it got there faster, but you usually ended up getting to 200% anyway. So once it's capped at 200%. I do like the fact that this damage to abnormals, you know, units is 30%, and that's something new you're getting. It's not something that, like, you could have gotten at level 5 anyway. So, should you get Jester? Well, again, unlock every hero, because when you test them, you start to see things. Sometimes the stats read a certain way, but certain things are more effective. I think if you use Zen or Crimson, Jester's probably a good bet because the attack enhancement is better. The 40% attack enhancement to the front 2 rows is better. I think that improving, if you get to level 7, improving the other hero's skill damage is really nice. But at level 5, silencing 3 units is better than what, Stormboy gave you at level 5. Uh, but I think that you have to structure your Titan gear that way and try to get more, vulnerable and debilitation effects, because those are the ones that are boosted. So, you want to have that 40% boost applied to as many places as possible. Uh, for if you have Maplin or Meowzilla, they don't do any vulnerable or debilitation, so you would be relying only on Titan gear. Or, for example, if you use, I don't know, if you don't have Layla or Duke and you use Shinji or Striker as your Indestruct, they don't really do debilitation either. So, in those situations, you may want to stick with Stormboy. But I do think the attack enhancement is significant, and the third silence is huge at level 5 for people who only go to level 5 skills. So as a result, I'm recommending Jester for some people. I do think she's an upgrade over Stormboy. But again, everything depends on the heroes you use and the setup you have. And I mean, I think there's the purple HT gives you damage reduction shields as well. And I don't think he puts anybody in abnormal status. So that purple HT may work better with Stormboy than it does with Jester. But that's the basic rundown. I've already talked far too much, and as you can probably hear, I am not feeling great today. So let's end this here. Any questions? I'm available. Like and subscribe. Cookie out.